Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, buddy. How are you guys?
We're good. We're good. Trying to process what we just witnessed. It's been like a super chaotic last 24 hours. The Kings did not make a move at the trade deadline. Let's start there. Were you surprised that they did not do anything before the deadline besides the Kessler Edwards move?
Well, I wouldn't say surprised. Like I wasn't expecting fireworks. I think they would have tried to kick the tires on some pretty aggressive moves and realize that, I used the analogy on the station the other day when you go car shopping and you start to look at what, you can afford and if you're in a trade in what you can get for your trade in and you go, oh, okay, well maybe I should wait a year, or maybe I should wait 6 months, or maybe some of those really attractive pieces that you might want to add, you may not have the means to land them, and you may not want to break the bank for them anyway. So I was expecting certainly a move, especially to possibly, address some specific needs on the team in terms of possibly defense. And, I'm always asked, what they need. And, I always go a little bit more aggressive. I tend to lean more towards the 3-and-D, a bona fide starting three. I shoot for the stars in that regard. But I didn't think that they might be able to land that piece. I thought they might be able to find some pieces, or a piece, at least one piece that would address some defensive concerns, or at least try to, kind of bolster down this team that's made it and surged all the way up to the 3 seed and has actually held on to the 3 seed for better part of a month. So, yeah, maybe a small bit of surprise, but certainly I think it just confirms that they've got a belief in their team, and they watch the rest of the West kind of be very, very aggressive in trying to everyone be buyers and not so many sellers. I mean, you look at a team like Toronto, who I think everybody thought was going to shop off pieces and try to get, big assets for, and they didn't. In fact, they doubled down and they go with Jakob Poeltl and kind of look like they're going to make a run now. So interesting to see the way the West takes shape, but you never know what the buyout market looks like. So we could see some still a piece or two trickle their way to Sacramento in a weird way.
Yeah, so we're just talking about that, talking about some of those pieces that we saw around the league that maybe the Kings could take on to make that tweak on their roster. And so many second round picks were given away for so many different players at this trade deadline. So it just seemed like something that the Kings could have done and could have made the move. But you just mentioned it, the buyout market. Do you think that's a place where we're going to see the Kings make some tweaks?
I think they'll explore it. I mean, it depends on who makes it, and obviously you've got to be attractive to the other player, because in the buyout market, they get to basically sign wherever they get to pick where they want to sign, as long as that team has an interest in them. So, yeah, I think there could be some possibilities there. I mean, the one that I think leaps off the page there is possibly like Danny Green, for example, who goes to Houston, I believe.
Yeah.
all these moves, I'm trying to keep track of them. I should have a sheet in front of me, but no, I mean, and kind of to your point, Morgan, about the second round picks, it's because no one really wants to move first round picks without protections, and the second round picks seem to be very, very much coveted, and it's no surprise. I mean, you've got there are successes in the second round. You just look at the last 2 years of MVP in Nikola Jokic, a former number 2 pick, or second round pick, I should say. But to that point, also, I mean, you look like a move like Josh Richardson, who goes from the Spurs to the Pelicans. The Pelicans dumped Devontae Graham and free up $24 million as some big salaries start to escalate on that Pelicans team. And it costs 4 second-round picks to make that happen. So I think when you're looking at somebody like that, Josh Richardson is an expiring contract. I know there was plenty of people who had interest, in seeing Mason Plumlee in a Kings uniform. And, if you're the Kings, like what it would take to do that, and if it takes multiple second-round picks to get a guy that ultimately would only play with you for about 28 remaining games and possibility of a small playoff run, is it worth it? So,
I mean, here's my thing with that, Sean. When was the last time someone was like, man, I made that trade. I can't believe those second round picks sure came back to haunt us. Like, it set our franchise back a long time, right? Like that doesn't happen. Who can? I'm like the Rams with second round pick, the Rams with first round picks. I'm like that with second round picks in the NBA. go make your team better. Like, give up second round picks and go get Plumlee then.
Yeah, but to me, I mean, and I'd be devil's advocate here for you in that regard, because I don't think he's worth multiple second round picks for what the Kings are trying to do. And I think that's what you have to ask. Certainly, I'm all for moving picks. Trust me, I'm the guy that, said over a year ago that I would, pick 3 on the Kings and I'd take Ben Simmons for him. And if it takes picks to do it, we can have that conversation. That hasn't aged well. So, second round picks to me are, this team historically doesn't really draft players with the second round picks, but you can now see the way teams trying to lower luxury tax and try to finagle different salary cap moves to where second round picks clearly have a value in this league, and they've probably been no more coveted at all than this year and going forward. So I'm with you. I think for the right piece, for sure, but for unless you're a team trying to shed salary like New Orleans just did with Devontae Graham and sending him with 4 second round picks for a guy like Josh Richardson who comes off the books. That's a decision they had to make. It was bigger for them to shed the salary rather than hope onto these second round picks and maybe turn them into something that could blossom into, a star or even just a role player.
We saw so many moves in the West yesterday. It seemed, or in the last 24 hours, all the teams around the Kings made some sort of moves. You can make the case, did they get better or not? But every one of them were active. Do you think the Kings feel comfortable with this roster and thinking that they could still stay in the top 6, even with what happened around them?
I mean, that's a question we're going to have to Monty McNair here in the coming days, and hopefully as soon as tomorrow. We're going to have a media availability for practice coming up here at the top of the hour. And Monty's not going to speak there, I don't believe. But if I'm, trying to step in the mind of that front office, I think that they're confident in the success and the record that they've compiled. I also am realistic enough to believe that they might feel they're playing with house money a little bit, in the fact that they've had some regular season success and may not want to completely you want to be careful. You don't want to just make a move for making a move. And, certainly if there's a move to make your team better, they'll do that, but you're not going to sacrifice possible future plans that you might have to really go deep with this. You've got Domantas Sabonis here through this season and next. You've got De'Aaron Fox long-term. You have to make a splash early and quickly. And you're third in the West. Let's see what this thing looks like. Let's see what they can get into the buying market, into some of these buyouts, and see what can happen. Look, I don't think it's something that they look at this year. It's playoffs or bust. Certainly this team looks like it's going to be a postseason team. It's going to contend. But it's not anything that they have to accelerate the process just because of some regular season success. I think this also incorporates the summer and next season as well to see what this team can really do. So, steady is I think everything is steady in the way they look at this team going forward. And clearly, I think they were going to try to be aggressive. I just feel like in a long-winded way that when you look at their assets, teams felt that they could do better elsewhere, and the Kings weren't really looking to, totally blow this thing up to make another franchise-altering move for something that may not be a franchise-altering piece.
Yeah, and I guess just seeing so many organizations in the Western Conference make franchise-changing moves at this trade deadline, it was probably the most concerning thing. And sure, you shouldn't be reacting off of them worried and then making panic moves. But at the same time, you would hope and think that maybe there was this feel behind the scenes that they knew that some of these fireworks were going to happen in the Western Conference, and or just tweaks happening in the Western Conference. You look at even the Dallas Mavericks. The Kings are taking them on this weekend, Friday and Saturday. It's a team that lacks a lot of defense, but man, they're going to look scary offensively. A team that looks like can keep creeping up, and up. And same with the Phoenix Suns, who were on life support and now are looking like a team that could possibly come out of the West. Are you feeling that same way about these squads that acquired these big names?
Well, I mean, you don't have to look much farther than the Clippers. I think Memphis made a really significant addition in Luke Kennard.
Yep.
I think these teams that surround the Kings are, not only being aggressive and trying to improve their teams, but let's face it, guys, these are teams that should have been better than the Kings to begin with. Not to take anything away from the success of Sacramento, but if we're going back at the front of the season and we're saying, hey, where do we picture these teams being? I think those are the types of teams that we pictured being much higher than Sacramento, more established, and certainly there to contend not only for just a playoff or an upper echelon playoff spot, but possibly a championship. So those are the type of teams that have to make those type of moves. The Kings are sitting here looking like, hey, look at what we've done. And certainly they're not in a position to act out of desperation. The Clippers are adding pieces that obviously they need. It hasn't worked for some time since they've landed both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And, obviously health is a big part of that. And then if you look at Memphis, my goodness, I mean, they lose some pieces in the offseason and they needed shooting in the worst way. And look, OG Anunoby doesn't get moved from Toronto. You go out and get a sharpshooter in Luke Kennard, who's led the league in 3-point shooting. That's going to be a hell of a piece for them. So, yeah, I mean, it's more of a double down on your success, but it's a double down on not totally wanting to disrupt things as it is. And I'll ask you guys, I mean, if you look at pieces that were out there that maybe you coveted, some of the realistic ones that you wanted to add, and you look at what the Kings might have had to give up for them compared to some of those pieces that actually moved. And I'll use Matisse Thybulle as an example. Him going to Portland, certainly he would have felt had a need on the Kings team, but I think they got more out of Portland than what Sacramento would have been willing to give up. So is there a piece out there you look at and go, man, that could have been the Kings?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, that Matisse Thybulle thing was a 3-team deal, and I'm sure, I think Philly got a great piece in McDaniels back, which I think may be a better fit for them. So that one's tough for sure. But yeah, I mean, the Plumlee one, I mean, they gave up Reggie Jackson and what to get Plumlee?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Second rounders.
I don't know. I just think, though, I wasn't looking to make a big swing today. I was looking at making one of those minor moves. I think the one that kind of stung was the Vanderbilt one too. There was a lot of talk about Vanderbilt, and I feel like he could have really impacted this team. Not only do some of these players that we're talking about you miss out on, they go to other teams in the West. And I think that's what makes it challenging for a team that's trying to stay in the top 6 is kind of my point.
Yeah. And I'd also point out in some of those names too, and, we don't have to get in the weeds of it too, but there's a lot of posturing by agents and names that are reported that you might think that have interest or that the Kings have interest in. And, there's varied levels of interest, right? And I'll use Jared Vanderbilt as an example. Having a possible interest or a conversation can get blown up into, the Kings are really interested, when they might just have like a, oh yeah, he'd be nice, maybe one of our expiring contracts, whatever. Sometimes that can get a little blown out of proportion in terms of maybe interest that the Kings actually had in somebody like that.
Sean, seriously appreciate you hopping on with us for a few minutes. We are up against it, but enjoy the Kings media availability, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Sean.
Anytime, guys. Good to talk to you.
All right, there's Sean Cunningham. We got to take a break on the radio side. Appreciate him joining us on the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Deuce Mo, we roll on Sactown Sports. All right, YouTube chat. Let's see what people. This is the most mixed, and I guess I'm not surprised. The most mixed I've seen the chat. Rory bringing up some interesting points. The Kings drafted like KJ Martin, Tillman. Who was the other name? Gary Trent, and they all like trade those for like I think a future second rounder or cash. And those guys would be nice to have right now.
You think about the time